Ugh, Daniel, thank God we're back in Gilville. I mean, thank Gil we're back in Gilville. Well, what is Gilville, Daniel? Quick.
Gilville is a magical
It's
town.
a
It's a
great
magical
town.
place.
It's a magical place. A place where there is no pain, there is no suffering, and everyone gets along. Oh man, I'm in a panic right now. I'm so glad I'm back. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I left
Did you go into the
Gilville.
real world?
I went to the real world, and something terrible happened. In fact, I gotta grab a drink. Let's go to the bar. All right, I'm feeling calmer already. Let me just get something here. I'm gonna order a Boom with overproof white rum. It's a classic beverage in Jamaica, which I learned about in the Jamaica Field Report in the original run of Gilville. Go ahead, Daniel. What are you gonna have?
That's such an interesting drink to order.
You know what Boom is?
No, I don't.
It's a popular energy drink in Jamaica.
I'm gonna have a new tonic and vodka. New tonic is a new productivity drink some influencers just launched.
This is one of those nootropics.
Yeah, it's like a nootropic drink.
I could use some help on this actually, because I probably shouldn't drink this Boom right now, because it's been a running theme on our various live streams and podcasts that I've been having a lot of trouble sleeping. Lately, it feels like I've forgotten how to do it. Like I just lay in bed and I'm like, what are the steps? Okay, I'm in bed. I've closed my eyes. Like, now what? What happens next? And then I just lie there, sometimes up to an hour. I might fall asleep, and then I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, wait, how did I fall asleep last night? And I just don't remember how to do it.
Do you ever just lie in bed and then realize you didn't close your eyes?
No, that
It's
I
happened
haven't
to me.
done.
It's happened to me. I think it's like when you're really like amped up and like, you know, when you're in that like half awake sort of anxious state, like where you can't fall asleep because your mind's like if you stay up late working on something and your mind's like still rushing doing whatever the thing you were working on was. Like those are the times where I find sometimes I'm like lying with my eyes open. And then to me it's awesome because I'm like, I'm annoyed that I'm not falling asleep. And then I realize I'm like, oh, I just gotta close my eyes. And then I close them and then I fall asleep.
I honestly can't relate. I don't know that that's ever happened to me, but I know who could relate to you is Adam.
Yes.
Do you believe him when he says this? He claims that for many years in his life, he didn't know that you were supposed to close your eyes when you go to sleep, or in order to fall asleep, you close your eyes. Like, I think he knew that it happened naturally, but he would just get in bed with his eyes open, I guess staring at the ceiling, these big wide eyes, and he just would wait until eventually his body gave out and he fell asleep.
And he's like, he's mad about it. He says, like, why didn't anybody ever teach this to me?
Yeah. And it's like, you're supposed to breathe in and then out on a repeatedly and in order to be alive. Why didn't anybody tell me this? Well, I've tried to tackle it in different ways. One way is part of what was keeping me up is I would think about work. And it was always these thoughts of, am I working on the right stuff? Did I do enough work? Am I on track? But then am I on track to what? What are my goals even? So to try and squash that, a few months ago, I put together a PowerPoint presentation. I shared it with you, where I basically pretended I'm presenting to the CEO of One Take. Here are our goals for the year, the things we're trying to accomplish. Okay, that didn't really work. So I took it a step further a few nights ago. I put together a spreadsheet where I listed out every video I want to make this year. How many hours is each one going to take? And then I put some formulas together. So if I put all the videos in a prioritized order, it basically calculates how many hours do I have to work per day for each video in order to get them all done. So at the end of the day, I can basically say, here's the chunk of work I got done tonight. All the formulas update, and it says you are or you aren't on track. Actually, I made a sanitized version of the spreadsheet. If we wanted to share it, I could pull it up.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah. The problem is, while I'm pulling it up, is that, you know how they say if you want to optimize something, you measure it. If you measure something, you automatically start optimizing. Like if you count calories, you automatically start eating less of them because you see the penalty of eating more. And so the problem here is that now I'm measuring how much work I'm getting done. And in this case, optimizing means doing more. So I suddenly feel this pressure. I should do 1 more hour of work tonight. If I do that, the formulas all get better. So on this tab here, I've listed out every video I'm working on and every individual task. So for example, Better Call Saul, what Better Call Saul is really about. You see listed here all the individual tasks of watch episode 1, take notes, and then listen to the behind the scenes for episode 1. You have that for every episode, have a time allocation for each episode, and so on. And then all this gets pulled into the work check tab, where you can see it lists out all the videos I'm working on. And if you pay close attention, you can see some clues here about what I'm working on. A lot of it's been wiped out. But what's that, 28 days later, Werba? Well, I didn't know One Take was working on that. Oh, he accidentally shared his screen and forgot to take that out. But you see here, I've input how many hours am I allowed to work each day. On a weekday, it's 8 hours. On a weekend, I allow 2 hours Saturday, 2 hours Sunday. And then based on that math over here, it predicts how many hours do I have to work per day by video in prioritized order, not only to get them all done this year, but to get each one done by its due date. So for example, if I want to get a video out before a certain movie release, then over here I have to put a target release date. And then next to that's the estimated release date based on all the math. And then over here, it calculates the difference. So basically this says that if my goal is to get the 28 days later Werba out by Friday, March 22nd, this says my estimated is March 18th. I've got a 4-day buffer. It's green. If any of these turn red, I'm behind schedule. But if I work extra, the green is going to get even more green, and then I could do more videos this year. So now, ever since I made this spreadsheet, things have only gotten worse because I get in bed and I'm like, well, would it kill me to stay up another hour and, chip away at this 28 days later Werba? Or perhaps work on mystery gaming video. It's over here.
Well, it's a 20-hour project too. It must be a big mystery gaming video.
No, that's 20 hours complete. There's 128 to go. So that didn't help. I don't know if you have any suggestions. It sounds like you don't.
I mean, it just makes me think about how easy it is to become obsessed with things when there are numbers that get greener the more you do it.
Oh, wait a minute. That's the answer. All I have to do is... Get rid of the green? No, keep the green, but add another line that says sleep. And that one turns red if I get less than 8.
Oh, that's a good point.
That's it. I think we have the answer. And I figured it out myself.
Yeah, and I don't think you'd be able to tolerate any red on your spreadsheet.
No, exactly. This is just like you called me earlier today with a problem, and then I ended up solving my own problem in the midst of I told you the issue, and within 10 minutes I solved it.
Wait, you solved your own problem?
Didn't I? I don't know. I feel that was the impression.
I thought I called you with a problem, and then I solved your problem instead of solving mine.
No, I remember it differently. Another funny thing in that conversation, we were talking about our exciting trip back to Gilville this evening, and we were talking about the branding, where you were like, we have a very complicated situation right now with many different attempts at podcasting. We started live streaming weekly on One Take, and then we were like, forget that. We're going to start doing a podcast called One Take on the One Take podcast channel, but we don't talk about movies. We talk about whatever we want. And then we're like, yeah, but nobody's going to listen to that if it's called One Take and it's not about movies. So what if we do a live stream on One Take, but it's like Trojan Horse, where we sneak podcasts into it? So we did a live stream where we would then record Gilville, Gil Reads Comics, Gaming with Gil during the live stream, and then repost it to the other channel. And so the branding has gotten complicated. So after going through all that, you're like, well, what episode of Gilville is this tonight? And I'm like, well, this is Gilville Returns, episode 2. But I think by legacy...
we're in such a convoluted web of brand architecture we're like a 70-year-old company that's made like tons of acquisitions and has like combined all these things together and like just doesn't know what they're doing. And it's like ultimately we're just two people with some other brothers too who make some videos.
Right. The stakes. Marvel has to worry about this. When Batman gets up to issue 1054, they have to worry about scaring people off with that big number. So they'll do a renumbering. This is Batman Rebirth, episode 3 or issue 3. But the stakes are that they have all these fans to please, and they have millions of people that are trying to get in to buy the comic. For us, what are the stakes? I know I can name one Gilville fan outside of friends and family who I guarantee she has no idea Gilville Returns exists. I actually had the thought the other day, I'll resurrect the old RSS feed and post these just so maybe Diane will see them. Because I know it would make her day.
I did see that we've not been posting this to the any of the podcast channels.
Well, I don't know where to post them because I don't even know. Like, should I start a new RSS feed for Gaming with Gil?
No. So everything we decided this earlier. We're going back to our roots. We're doing Gilville. We can call it Gilville Returns if you think it's important. But we're doing Gilville. This is it. This is Gilville.
Yeah,
I think we even go back to the old Gilville RSS feed.
So there'll be like 25 episodes, and then a 3 or 4 year gap,
and then Gilville Returns.
Well, but you can't suddenly call it Gilville Returns. That's the name of the RSS feed. Unless the titles of each episode, now we have to take up like 12 characters of every title is Gilville Returns. I don't want to say tonight's episode yet because it'll be a spoiler.
Well, on Spotify, you can actually have different thumbnails for each individual episode. So I wonder if you could just start releasing like episode number 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, and we just use a different like logo.
This is more of the same problem that we spent all this time optimizing something that it's. What are we optimizing to? What problem are you trying to solve by changing that thumbnail between episode 26 and episode 27?
All right. All I'm saying is we got to get back on a Gilville RSS feed.
All right, this is getting me all stressed out. Let me take another sip of this Boom and overproof white rum.
I'm going to have a sip of my new tonic and vodka.
All right, I think after a couple of sips, getting some of this alcohol into my system, getting all socially lubricated, I'm feeling relaxed, and I'm ready to talk, I think, about what happened. Let's go to the hospital.
Are we done with the Gilville stuff then? The Gilville branding discussion?
Did you have more to say?
No, I think we're resolved.
Well, let's talk here. Let's normally we just kind of teleport. Let's walk. All right.
All right, so we can finish our conversation on the walk.
Because we've never been to the Gilville hospital before, so we don't have the waypoint activated yet.
I'm nervous what's going to be in the hospital for us. I'm scared.
Yeah, you should be scared.
Gilville Returns is almost as dark as Gilville Campfire.
I just stepped on a needle. That feels pretty good, actually, though, whatever was in that. Yeah. All right. Let me open the door here. No one's been in here in a long time. It's a little dusty. You smell that? Hospital? That can only mean one thing.
We're in the hospital.
We're at the Gilville Hospital. All right, so I'm going to tell you what happened. On Friday, just a few days ago, I was in the real world, and I was on my way to Alon's place to use the gym. That's where we work out. And I've been feeling really motivated lately about the gym because actually that morning I was working on a spreadsheet, which I could pull up if you want later. But it tracks all my gym stats. It predicts when I'm going to hit certain PRs. It tracks all my lipid profile, blood results, all that stuff. So I was feeling super motivated, super on track, and all day I was looking forward to benching and doing a push workout. So it's about a 40-minute trip from my place. About half that is on the subway, half of it's walking. And during the walk, I decided to call home, speak with my mother, And one thing that you should know about my mom, who is also your mom, Daniel, we're brothers, she's a big worrier and she doesn't handle when things go badly. She will panic. And like, let's say something happened to you and I get a call, her tone of voice will tell me that anything happened in the range between you lost an arm, you're bleeding to death, you got to get there as fast as possible, or you stubbed your toe. Her tone of voice will cover that entire range. It'll be just at DEFCON 10. Or I forget if DEFCON higher or lower is worse, whichever it is.
DEFCON red.
DEFCON red.
It's not actually red, but I'm just connecting it to your spreadsheet. We can bleep
I
that out,
see.
right?
Yeah. This spreadsheet cell is certainly turning red. So I'm on the phone with her when this happens. I'm talking to her. I'm crossing one street. I'm crossing another street. I get to the final street that must be crossed. I can literally see his building. I could spit and hit his building because I'm halfway across the street, the last one I have to cross. And then suddenly I look up and I have only a moment to process that I'm about to get hit by a motorcycle running a red light. And so I got hit. Suddenly I was on the ground and I don't remember. See, I keep thinking back to it, trying to remember certain details. Like, could I have dodged it? I have no idea. All I remember is seeing a motorcycle and then suddenly I remember having the knowledge that it's going to hit me. And the next thing I knew, I was on the ground. And then I asked my mom after, because she was on the phone the whole time. I was like, what did you hear on the phone? And she's like, it was kind of like some noise. I didn't really know what was going on. And then I heard you go, I think I need to see a doctor. But I remember feeling very mentally calm. No alarm bells went off in my head. There was never oh my God, I'm about to get hit or anything like that. Total calm. I mean, my heart must have been racing because my hands were shaking after. But for example, I remember I was carrying a Monster energy drink with me and it was completely ripped up and crushed and open on the ground. But I grabbed the can, I stood up, and in my head, I was going to keep drinking it and just walk to a lunch place. So I'm standing there limping, holding a broken Monster Energy leaking on my hand, just walking along like everything's fine. And so by this point, a few people have crowded around us to ask if we're okay. And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. But looking back, clearly I was disoriented and not fine because I just got hit. I don't know what I'm doing because once again, I feel like if you see the image of a guy holding a pulverated can and just sipping from it after getting in an accident and limping to the side of the road, I feel that you shouldn't take no for an answer. Like when I say, no, I don't need help, you should come over and insist and like help me to cross the rest of the road. Not to mention the guys who hit me. And there were two guys on the motorcycle.
Who, they just kept going, right?
I remember them looking like, what have we done? And asking, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And then they drove off. And the other thing that bugs me though, again, my memory's really fuzzy. And I asked ChatGPT, and if you didn't hit your head, could you still have memory loss from an event like this? And it said that when you get really stressed and the adrenaline pumps for the fight or flight response, you'll have a great memory of the moment it happened, but everything else might be fuzzy because your mind gets so focused on the threat. But I remember that while I was on the ground, I looked up and there were like 5 people checking on the guys on the motorcycle. And I was getting kind of a pity, like, how's it going? Are you okay? All right, what about you guys? Are you okay? Helping them up. But as I was limping across the street, everybody had dispersed. All the cars were beeping at me, of course. Like, hurry up. And actually, that reminded me of a previous incident. I was in another car accident. Well, I guess this wasn't a car accident. And depending on who you ask, well, this was getting downplayed, what happened to me. But we'll get to that. But a few years ago, I woke up. It's time to go to work, but there was a really bad snowstorm out. But the message was you got to come anyway. There's no excuses. You got to come to work. So this girl and I, we were at a hotel. We get an Uber together, Uber XL, and we go out into the snowstorm. And literally, there are just a bunch of cars on the side of the road. Every once in a while, you see a car spin out and just land on the side of the road. It's a hellscape out there. And I'm like, we're definitely going to crash. Halfway through the drive, the car starts spinning out of control, careening toward the edge of the highway. And all I see is a big hill, a bunch of trees, and I'm like, we're going into the trees. As we're spinning, I'm on a conference call at the time. So for some reason, whenever this stuff happens to me, I'm on the phone. And I just remember the girl next to me is screaming uncontrollably. Like, you know, when you have a nightmare and you have that feeling of just like, you can't control it. She's doing that. And I just remember saying, oh, hold on, guys, I'm about to get in a car crash. And then I put the phone down. But there is a moment as we're spinning out of control. I see the hill, I see the trees. I'm like, we're going down the hill. It's like, I don't know if I'm going to survive this. I might get really badly injured. So I tell them, I put the phone down, I just close my eyes. And there was a moment of just peace. And then, boom, there was, I don't know what you call it, on the side of the road that stops cars if they crash so they don't just go off road. Whatever you call that. It was shrouded by snow, so I couldn't see it. But we crashed into that, and we were fine. So I don't know, for some reason when this stuff happens, I'm on the phone. So people can corroborate that. And I don't know if it's a good thing, but I get an intense calm when horrible things are happening.
Did you actually say I'm about to get into a car crash?
Yeah, 100% I said that.
That's crazy.
Which might explain why when I got in, all I heard was, look who decided to show. Because it's hard to... It's the same problem I had with this motorcycle accident because I'm sitting there saying, why aren't people helping me? Meanwhile, I'm calmly telling people, oh, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. But so at first, I didn't really feel any pain. It didn't really process mentally that anything was wrong. Like I said, for the first 20 seconds after getting hit, my only thought was pick up the drink. I could probably still work out. It's not like a leg day or anything. And then I realized it's taking me a while to cross the street because now the lights turned. Like I looked up, I remember seeing 20 seconds left to cross. But those 20 seconds went by and I was still in the crosswalk. So I'm like, apparently I'm walking a lot slower than I realized. And then suddenly I started to feel intense pain in both my legs. And so I sat down on a sidewalk as soon as I got there. And then a family walked by and this guy kept asking over and over, are you okay? He's like, I saw what happened. I can't believe it. Are you okay? And I was like, yeah. I think I got to call the cops or something, but I'm fine. So I called the police after and they asked if I needed an ambulance. And I wanted to say no. Mentally, I was still thinking no, but I've heard so many stories of people thinking they're fine and then like blood clot killed them 6 hours later. So I was like, why not get checked out just in case? But while I'm on the phone with the cops, suddenly I see Alun, my older brother, run like Terminator 2. I've never seen him run that fast. He just sprints right past me. And I'm like, where is he going? I think I even said that to the woman on the phone, the operator at what do they call the person who picks up when you call the cops? The dispatch, whatever.
I think the operator.
I think I told her, I was like, I think that's my brother. She's like, what? And I'm like, oh, nothing.
Dispatcher. Yeah, it is the 911 dispatcher.
But afterwards, I call one, and he's like, dude, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sitting right outside your building. I think I just saw you run by. But what happened is he got the call from my mom. So she set off the alarm bells. He had no idea where I was, and he just went sprinting, just trying to find me. We get on the ambulance, and the longer that passes from the moment I got hit, the more and more it's starting to hurt. Like the adrenaline's wearing off, and it's hurting bad. Like I didn't cry, but I was holding back tears from I felt just the worst pain in my right thigh. And so I figured that's probably where I got hit. And then I start to feel that my left ankle's hurting. So I think they hit my thigh and it spun me around. So I twisted my ankle when I fell. And then this is where the downplaying starts to happen. First off, I keep saying I got hit by a motorcycle. As they wheel me in on the wheelchair, they're like, yeah, he got hit by a scooter. And like, when I hear scooter, I don't even necessarily picture an engine driven vehicle. Like, I think of the things that kids ride around on with the two wheels and the handlebar. But they keep saying I got hit by a scooter. Oh, and as I was stepping out of the ambulance and into the wheelchair, I'm slowly lowering myself, trying to be careful. And then the guy holding it's like, whoa, 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 look at all that blood. And I stop. And he's like, nah, I'm just messing with you. And I'm like, I appreciate the joking around, but right now, the most painful thing I can imagine is slowly bending my knees and then suddenly stopping. And so they're wheeling me in, telling everybody I got hit by a scooter. And then they put me on the bed. And when the doctor walks in, she goes, so you got hit by a guy like delivering food on a bicycle or something? And like, where did the bicycle come into it? and that's specific. She actually said a guy delivering food. Like, where did that come? They're just inventing details now to downplay the story. But I got checked out. No broken bones, just a deep tissue bruise. That's the funny thing is, if you look like at my thigh, there is not a scratch, not a mark, nothing. Even my niece, we saw our nieces and nephew over the weekend. She was like, does it hurt? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, did you get dirty when you fell? And I'm like, no, not really. Do you have like a cut or a bruise? And I'm like, no, not really. And she's like, does it really hurt? I'm like, yes, it hurt. It really hurts. But there's no mark because it's a deep tissue bruise, arguably worse than a normal bruise. But I can't even get hurt normally. Everything's weird. Like, oh, you got a bruise? Kind of. What do you mean kind of? Like a normal bruise? Well, it's a deep tissue bruise. Okay, sure it is.
So Gil,
there is swelling on my foot, my ankle. You can't. It's gone down though, so you can't see it anymore.
Gil, did you just trip on the sidewalk and you felt too embarrassed to admit it?
How does that even make? Let's say I tripped on this. You're saying I tripped, but somehow just landed really badly.
No, and you sprained. You like hurt your ankle a little bit. And then you ask the doctor, you're like, my thigh kind of hurts. Is there anything that can cause thigh pain, but like you can't see anything? And they're like, I guess it could be like a deep tissue bruise or something.
I'm feeling really like, I'm feeling really tired all of a sudden too. Like I haven't been sleeping well. Could that have been caused by this? So you're saying you fell, and could that have made you sleep poorly last night? I mean, you're the doctor. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, and then the doctor very reluctantly wrapped my ankle. She kind of threw ace wrap at me. And
doctors do not want to wrap ankles after ankle injuries. I don't know why.
She really didn't want to. She kind of tossed the wrap at me and was like, you know how to do this? You need help? And was like halfway at the door. And I was like, well, I mean, I could use help. Like I don't know. I don't know how to do it. At least you could tell me how to do it, and then maybe I could do it. And then she wrapped my ankle and then was like, you're free to go. And so I limp to the lobby and I sit down while we're waiting for an Uber. And then I see the doctor kind of hurriedly leaving. And I sort of waved at her and she gave me a sideline glance and walked out, sort of annoyed. I think she was finishing up her shift, and it was like, this guy needs me to wrap his ankle now. I have to spend an extra 12 seconds here for a guy who stubbed his toe on a bike that wasn't even moving.
Yeah, for a guy who walked into a bike. Can I just rant about doctors for a second, and we'll get back to the scooter thing?
Sure. Motorcycle. I'll admit it might have been a scooter, but there are scooters now that look exactly like motorcycles.
Yeah, it if anything, it might have just been a motorcycle that can't go as fast, and right, like there's like a speed limit, I think, or maybe it's engine power or something that distinguishes the two. All right, quick complaint about doctors. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine texted me today about his blood test. He went to go to his blood test. We've talked about this a bunch, and I went really deep down this rabbit hole a few months ago where I learned that ApoB is the metric that's predictive of heart disease, not LDL. But everybody just tests for LDL because like this hasn't made its way through the establishment yet, even though this research has been well established for like decades. ApoB much more predictive of heart disease than LDL.
Yeah, and
My
just
friend,
a quick note on that to give a little more detail. Basically, when you get your blood tested to check if you're at risk of heart disease, they look at LDL. But what people have realized over time is that LDL is a way of trying to figure out if you have high ApoB. High LDL might mean you have high ApoB, but it might not mean that. But recently, it's become very easy to just test ApoB directly, but you have to ask for it, and it's not done by default.
yeah, and so my friend asks to get tested for it, and the doctor dissuades him from it and says, "Oh, there's really no reason. You're really not at risk for heart disease. If you want to be extra careful, just eat like less fried foods." And it's like I got so angry when he texted me this because it's like, I mean, it makes no sense. But why? Like you're testing for LDL, just test for ApoB. It costs like 10 cents. Like there's no reason not to test for it.
I don't think at risk of heart disease is something you can just tell by looking at someone.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of the blood test.
That's the point. He might have high ApoB. We don't know until we test for it. Like it's just such nonsense. And like a lot of doctors, they'll act like you're a hypochondriac or something. And it's like, you're testing me for heart disease already. Just test me for the metric that's actually useful. It's just so frustrating. Now I get it.
They take it as an insult. Like I've seen people on Reddit talking about this, where the response is, "Oh, so can I get my ApoB tested too?" Okay, Dr. Google.
It makes me really angry. But speaking of anger, unless you got something else about this doctor thing.
Well, one other thing, just one more to add on to your rant.
Yeah.
People act like, well, you're not at risk of heart disease because you're young. And for example, if you have high LDL at age 25, they won't put you on drugs to try and fix it. But if you have high LDL at age 40 or 50, they will put you on drugs. So it's kind of like they're telling you it's fine to have your blood all screwed up until you get older. But the idea with having high ApoB, it's kind of like the longer you are existing with high ApoB, the more damage you're doing internally. So you are increasing the risk of heart disease. It just won't manifest until you're older. But by then, it's kind of too late to undo the damage that's already been done.
We think about so much of this stuff completely incorrectly. It's like, yeah, every day you have elevated ApoB. It is doing the things that cause heart disease. Like heart disease is a disease that happens over decades and decades and decades. So it's really silly to just wait until you're older to start to treat these things, especially when we can test for these things really, really cheaply. It's just nonsense.
Yeah, agreed. You had another thing.
Well, I'm angry.
Also one thing. Sorry, one last thing. Scooters banned in Gilville. No scooter or motorcycles, and no doctors either. I'm sick of this.
So that's why the Gilville Hospital's been abandoned. Do you think that might have had the ban of doctors? Do you think that had anything to do with Gilville turning into a ghost town?
What was the next thing you wanted to bring up? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I'm this angry about my friend's doctor not testing him for ApoB. And by the way, he even said, look, if you really want to, I'll test you for it. Right? So it's like he was willing to test for it. But I'm this angry about that. How are you containing your anger from getting hit by these guys running a red light and then running off? Yeah, like, I would be so mad.
It's been really I've thought about that. It's been really strange that the reaction is not what I expected at all, because I'll admit I am fairly quick to anger sometimes. It's not like I scream at people or hit things. Like when I get angry, I contain it. I just get very quiet, and you can just see my eyes are angry. But I have not felt really a shred of anger. And I think part of it is actually, I think this is a pretty good attitude, but I honestly just feel like very lucky because I keep thinking, my God, how much worse it could have been. Like I think they swerved at the last second, and so they kind of clipped my leg. But what if they hit me straight on and I like flipped over them and I just hit my head the wrong way? And really, the wounds I suffered, I'll probably be back to 100% in a couple of weeks. It's already at the point where I can kind of walk normally. If I take a few steps, my ankle, my thighs start to just throb in pain. And I had to cross. This is a very annoying thing. My apartment when I'm not in Gilville, you have to cross like 7 streets
Yeah.
in a row. I don't know why. And you have to cross like 7 crosswalks to get to where the stores are. And so I had to cross all that like limping the other day or yesterday. And so normally I just run across because otherwise I end up getting stuck in the middle. Then you have to wait for it to start the walk signal to come on again.
Oh,
So
just to clarify, like it's a single intersection. It's like one green light to cross this intersection, and yet you have to cross like 10 different roads.
yeah. So if you are
Yeah.
not at the start of that crosswalk, the moment it turns green, you will not make it all the way across in the allotted time unless you're running. Yeah, so I think I'll be better in a few days. I'm already getting better. And I'm a little annoyed that, because I was getting so excited. I even started working out again yesterday. I had to, anything that causes my legs to tense up, I can't do. But anything that's really isolated to the upper body, I've been able to do. And like, I'll be better in a couple weeks. So I just feel I'm lucky. I just want to get past it and get back to work, get back to normal. But there was a moment last night at the gym where I like tweaked my leg slightly and it hurt. And then at that moment, I was like, come on. What? Why did they run? All right, here we go. I'm feeling the anger come back. I don't know why you felt like this was a good idea. I have like such an unbelievably positive attitude about the whole thing. Very unusual for me. And you come over and start poking at me, trying to get me mad.
Come on, get angry.
Why did they run the red light? And the other thing is, they didn't see me. So I assume they were swerving around cars because we're on a scooter. We can do whatever we want. And so all these cars are stopped. So they're swerving between them. So when they went around the car in front, they must have just at the last second seen that I was there. And it's just, why did they do that?
I mean, a hit and run is like such a horrible thing to do. Like, not only, were they driving extremely unsafely, but they didn't, like, they hit somebody and didn't stop and make sure the person's okay. Is like horrible.
That's like that's like a dick move, right?
It's more than that. I mean, that's like a jail time move if they ever got caught.
I'm going to say this right now too. They are permanently banned from Gilville. There is actually an invisible barrier around Gilville, and anybody who's on the ban list, the moment they walk through that barrier, they're vaporized. Now, unfortunately, I don't remember who's on the list because we came up with these names a while ago. So for all I know, I'm going to invite someone like, come on down, stop by for a visit. Oh no! There was a perceived slight one day and I put them on the list and I forgot.
Gil has one too many drinks one night, edits the list. Next morning, can't remember.
These names are all illegible, but the computer or the somehow it works. Actually, it did make me think of you because in a very circuitous way, a weird thing happened where after this occurred, the following weekend, this was a Friday, the next couple days, I feel like I kept coming across horrible stories, either on YouTube or just reading about them, about people who went thrill seeking and died. So one of them is so horrible to imagine, I won't even describe it. I'll just say it involves caves, and if you're claustrophobic, don't read it. And don't even stop trying to imagine what I'm saying. Don't even think about it. Or a guy who was trying to get clout on YouTube, so he jumped off a building with a mini parachute. Parachute didn't go off. And you hear the thump when he hits the ground. I keep seeing these videos. And then, one thing that's come in handy, and don't worry, this comes back to you. And we haven't talked about me in over 10 minutes. Hey, ApoB. You want to know my ApoB? One thing that's come in handy this whole time, because I've been stuck on the couch, I have to keep my leg up while I'm working. The Vision Pro has been great. I've been able to have these big monitors floating in front of me while I'm working. And I saw that they introduced this new feature where Apple is putting out their own immersive videos, these sort of mini documentaries, where it makes you feel like you're sitting in the environment. So one of them is It's this adventure episode, they call it, all about this lady who does highlining. Are you familiar with highlining?
Is that I think it's slacklining but high up where they're like standing on this rope and it's just like above like a huge canyon or something. Is that right?
Yeah, so imagine like a tight wire where
Yeah.
you're walking across the wire, but you go up on a cliff and you just find some part of the cliff where it sort of curves so you can connect the wire from one side of the cliff to the other, and then you try and walk across it. Now, of course, you're harnessed in, but and even then she's like, I checked the harness 5 times. And I'm like, why not put a second harness? I feel like if this was me, I'd have like 12 harnesses on and like 19 ropes. Because there's no, what do you call it when you have a backup? A redundancy.
Redundancy.
There should be like 10 redundancies.
Well, there's redundancy within the harness itself. Usually like for rock climbing, like it's composed of like, I don't like, first of all, they're like extremely tight ropes or like strong ropes, but even the ropes, right? They're made of individual threads, right? So it's like you would have to cut through every single thread to break it. But then I think usually there's like systems within whatever, like there's multiple things that would need to be cut for you to fall out of it. Generally that was my conclusion from like learning more about rock climbing is there's definitely things you can do to feel safe about it.
And I'm always like, the rock that you stuck the thing into that's holding you, how do you know the rock's going to hold up?
So that's the thing
Like,
I was always the most skeptical
You walk
about.
over to the rock, you tap it a couple times. All right, good to go. Like,
So that's what they do. So they'll like tie ropes around trees and then like rappel down like, 1,000 feet and you're hanging from this tree and they're basically look at the tree. They're like, it doesn't even have to be that thick, like a tree this thick. But if it's alive, it'll be sturdy enough. But it's like, how do you know?
Well,
Like,
I
that's
knocked
crazy.
on it a couple times and like I could tell. Don't worry. Trust me.
But I
have,
appreciate the skepticism.
I would have a harness just like, because you have the one harness on your waist, but I would get like an arm harness, a leg harness, a neck harness.
You get just like torn apart.
They get to the scene, they're like, what happened to this guy? Like, I don't understand.
You're just hanging in the middle of like next to this cliff, just being pulled in every direction. You're like the what is that? The house in Bolton, House Bolton. You're like that guy.
They're like, for
Anyway.
some reason, he was missing all his toes, and each of them had an individual harness attached to it.
Man, see, things get really dark when we leave Gilville. And it's been so long since we've been in Gilville. We spent all this time in the outside world. Yeah, we got to get back to Gilville, where horrible things like this don't happen. Where, if you chop off your toes in Gilville, they grow back.
I do that on a regular.
And it's
See,
fine.
here's the problem, because I hate cutting my toenails. I can't get the right shape. They end up too sharp. I think Adam has a scar from my toenail from years ago. I think Alun has one too. So in Gilville, I just chop my toes off and they grow back the next day. The problem is you leave Gilville and it becomes such a habit. So I'm like in a hotel room and down the hall you just hear like, "Ah!" But all this made me think of you, because I would say you're more of a thrill seeker than I am. Right? I mean, you like skydiving.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time wrapping my head around how skydiving fits into your value system. Because here's what you're basically doing, is you love life, right?
I'm a fan.
So what you're basically doing is you're tossing yourself from the sky to trick your body into thinking it's going to die. So your brain releases all these endorphins. And then you release the parachute and you live. But that good feeling is that your mind thought you were going to die. So you are doing a thing you are not supposed to do. Human evolution, millions of years, has prepared you to say, don't do this.
No.
But you and all your arrogance, I know better.
I don't think the experience of skydiving is your mind thinks you're going to die. I think it's the same experience as like when we would have seen a lion in the woods and we ran away from it. It's that like adrenaline rush.
Well, but isn't that I think I might die?
Yeah, so I have to go
So
do
you
all this like stuff to to save myself.
okay? So you imagine this: you're whispering into the past. As I thought about this, we have literally thousands of generations before us. I might even explore that in the Gilville archives one day. But there are thousands of generations who came before us in our family line. There might have been somebody thousands of years ago, just like you, Daniel 1.0. You're Daniel, let's say 10.0. Daniel 1.0 right now is running for his life from a lion, and then he finds out that you are like, I'm going to put myself in front of the lion and then run because it makes me feel good. And he's like, all my kids and brothers just got eaten by that lion, because that's what life is like right now. We're just getting eaten left and right. Cousin got stepped on by a dinosaur. It's not funny. No. I'm not really. The lion was a metaphor. Actually, I'm going in an airplane. It's kind of like a metal bird, and I'm jumping off it. First off, you'd be burned at the stake because you're talking absolute nonsense. What the hell is metal? And how could you stand on a bird? It's too small. I forget. What point was I making?
I think the
I think that injection I accidentally took earlier is getting to my head. I can't think straight.
It's getting to my head too. I think they would have so many issues with the way we live today, our ancestors. The skydiving would be the least of their concerns.
Do you think it would be like in the movies? I never bought this. Like, let's say I'd never seen a car before. I don't think if I came to the future and I saw a car, I'd be like, what the hell is that horse? What's wrong with that? They always do that. They're like, oh my God, a dragon. If you see an airplane doesn't look like a dragon. And it doesn't flap its wings, so I wouldn't think it's a bird either. I think I would actually figure out what it is pretty fast.
You'd be like, is that some type of man-made object that's used to fly through the air? Through the air, plane?
What is air? All right, I'm feeling kind of down now. I didn't really like a lot of the stuff we talked about.
I have an idea.
You made me relive my trauma. And then even when I was at peace with it, you got annoyed at me and made me mad again.
Should we go to the Gilville comic book store?
How did you know? That's what I was going to say. Because what did Mom always used to do when we needed cheering up? Get us a Spider-Man comic. That's not true. Actually, I remember when I was a kid, I wanted to read comics so bad. And I remember right next to the Blockbuster in our town, there was a comic book store. And I can vividly remember seeing a cardboard cutout of Spider-Man in front. But I was always too embarrassed to go in. So I never went, and then it closed down. And now I'm depressed again. Thanks, Daniel. Let's go to the comic book store.
You smell that?
Comics? That can only mean one thing. We're at the Gilville comic book store. And I think while we're here, we should sit down and record an episode of Gil Reads Comics. And the boys did record that podcast. Click the link in the description if you'd like to hear it. Otherwise, we'll fast forward and rejoin their adventure once they've finished recording. Spider-Man.
So I'm a little confused. So we were at the hospital.
Shocking.
So we're at the Gilville hospital. We walk over from there to the Gilville comic book store. But then we're just browsing. We're browsing in the comic book store. We pick up a Spider-Man issue. And you and I, we just start recording a podcast right there. Don't you think we should have had to go into a podcast studio? Maybe there's a podcast studio in the back of the comic book store that we should have got into to sit down to record a podcast.
Well, we have drones covered in microphones and cameras that follow us around and then transmit it to the mainland and reconfigure the images so it looks like two people live streaming out of their living room or bedroom, because you have to keep Gilville shrouded in secrecy. But if it makes you feel more comfortable, We can put in a request with the Clockwork Elves and have them build a podcast studio. Now we need a podcast studio attached to every structure. Now here's what I'm wondering. Like, it does feel weird. Let's say you're listening to Gilville, and then it just takes a 25-minute jaunt where now you're deep diving into an issue of a comic that even most comic book readers aren't reading. So what if we do this? We go to the comic book store, and then it plays some fun music, and it says, like, to hear this adventure, check out Gil Reads Comics episode 4. And then it just cuts back and we're done. Is that...
Yeah.
It feels very weird. And then people are listening to Gil Reads Comics, and it's like, well, we're in the Gilville hospital. And they're like, what? This guy needs to be in a hospital, a mental hospital.
Yeah, maybe it's yeah, I think that works. But we could have some in-universe, even more of an in-universe explanation. Like we go and sit down in, that's why I like my podcast studio idea, is within Gilville, we're gonna go sit down in a Gilville podcast studio. And so it's like we release that recording within Gilville on this other.
And then if you listen to Gil Reads Comics, nobody has to know it was recorded in the Gilville podcast.
Nobody
studio.
has to know.
Well, it could be funny, actually. It puts it, put in the description, recorded at the Gilville podcast studio. And people go, what is that? It's going to get people talking. All right. So that was, so the Gil Reads Comics clip would have cut by now. So now we're purely in Gilville.
This is Gilville.
This is Gilville.
We're gonna go mad. Now, what if in the Gil Reads Comic podcast, which we are recording from inside the Gilville recording studio,
in the Gilville comic book store?
Yeah, what if Gil Reads Comics invents another town that within Gil Reads Comics they want to go explore? Comics Town.
And maybe.
No, I'm not. I'm saying, what are we gonna do if that happens?
Wait, who's doing that?
We might do that. I don't know. It's
because
not us.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Because when we go to record Gil Reads Comics, it's like our consciousness splits in two.
Yeah.
So there's Comic Gil, Gilville Gil, One Take Gil, and there's 3 of you.
Well, Comic Gil is not aware of the outside world. Comic Gil only exists.
Severance. It's Severance.
It's Severance. What are you writing that down?
No, I was applauding. You didn't hear that?
Oh no, I didn't.
What the? Oh wait, hold on. Let me fix that.
Yeah. Gil, maybe that's our in-universe explanation. We're severed.
Wait, hold on. Hear that? All right, say Severance again. Well, I said Severance. Severance!
So yeah, Gil, what if it's Severance? What if we're severed when we go into the Gil Reads Comics comic book studio recording?
I think that's a good mental frame. So that way when we record it, we don't sound like lunatics. All right. I think.
And then I'll be like, we're reading this Spider-Man comic, and I'll be like, what's a building?
Why do you not know what a building? I guess you've never been outside.
I'm severed.
Because you only exist in the podcast studio.
I'm 1 hour old.
So you wake up, you are terrified because you've never felt anything, seen anything before, and you're just trying to take in the world. And I'm like, read this comic. What's a Spider-Man?
Okay,
it's an ultimate Spider-Man. What's ultimate?
I think for this episode of Gilville, we have to keep the Gil Reads Comics still in there.
Well, I think we put it on fast forward,
one.
though. It's like, time for Gil Reads Comics. Spider-Man.
Okay, I like that idea.
And then I could just put in some voiceover to explain what's happening. Okay. And then when it cuts back to this, I'll explain it again.
But Gil, I'm worried. The whole laws of physics in Gilville are like breaking down for me. The laws of physics are breaking down for me, Gil. I'm worried that we don't have. There's some weird, like, what even just happened now? Like, we just decided that we're severed when we're in the comic book room, right, but we weren't severed before. I have an explanation.
Okay.
I think I know what happened. We weren't severed when we went in there. But going in there opened up some weird rift and it caused all these issues for us and all this confusion about what's going on. And so now we need to invent Severance for us next time we do Killer Reads Comics.
I might just put a warning before the last 10 minutes starts and just say, like, look, the episode's not over. Doesn't mean you have to keep listening. And now, as always, we're going to close this episode by going to sleep. I don't know. Oh, are you feeling tired, Daniel? After another adventure in Gilville, I'll say this though, like our mission, I don't even know if we told everybody, if people haven't heard this, but we were sent here on a secret grant from a mysterious benefactor to revitalize Gilville because it's a ghost town. I'm just too tired to do it right now. So I think we're going to have to try it another time.
Yeah.
And I think to help with going to sleep, I'm going to just hit you with a trank dart. I'm going to hit myself with it.
Wait, does everyone remember where we sleep?
We sleep anywhere. I'm just going to pass out here in the comic book store. I'm just going to use all these comics as blankets.
I'm going to go sleep in the recording studio in the comic book store so that I can get severed.
You can get some private stuff. I'm going to have to ban that word. Oh no, I'm starting to pass out. Hey, get out of here. Go to the podcast studio. All right. Hey, sorry everybody for Daniel. I was going to say he's not himself, but the problem is that he is himself. So I really can't do anything about it. All right. A lot of tough.